Well, greetings, brothers and sisters. Here we are. We are at the airport on our way to North Carolina. And I wanted to share something with you regarding Conrad Vine. Conrad Vine, as I stated in last videos about him, he's not the Martin Luther as we thought he was. He's not the Elijah as we thought he was. He's not John the Baptist. He's not the kind of reformer that we were hoping that he would be. Because you see, none of the reformers and those men that I mentioned ever said anything about in support of the organization in their days, which was persecuting God's people, the faithful few. They called the church out of the organization. And as you heard before, and I'm going to play that clip just so if you were not aware of it, here's what Conrad Vine had to say about those who meet in their home, those who do not meet in a church that has the conference logo, those who, like the disciples and Christ, who did not get permission, so-called permission, from the conference to meet separately. And even Ted Wilson recently had something to say about that. As a matter of fact, let me play the clip from Ted Wilson first, where Ted Wilson talks about, those independent groups, they do their own thing. They don't support the church. Listen to the clip again.
But there are organizations that are called independent ministries, and you can find a great variety of them all over the world. People who simply have their own ideas, they want to push an agenda, and they don't really want to work closely with the church. They think they are either more purified than the church, or they don't need the church, or whatever it is. I don't know what their reasons are. And then you find many organizations that are supporting ministries. They work closely.
And now let's compare this clip with what Conrad Vine said recently.
Every ministry that is not in the yearbook is independent legally of the church. An independent ministry, so, for instance, OCI, ASAP, Jesus for Asia, all of these regular ministries who are ASI members, they are all technically independent ministries, independent in the legal sense that they are not controlled by the denomination. They're not included in the yearbook that is published every year. So, yes, it is an independent ministry in that sense, but then you have supporting ministries, and you have independent ministries in terms of the philosophy of their ministry, and a supporting ministry exists to support the mission of the worldwide SDA Church, and an independent ministry exists to criticize and to start something new away from the SDA Church. And I have no intention of doing the latter. So it's not an independent, it's not an offshoot group. I'm not starting a church. It's just a preaching ministry. So I'm not starting an offshoot group. I'm not starting a fellowship group in my own house. So I'm not starting an offshoot group. I'm not starting a fellowship group in my own house or anything like that. So it's not an offshoot.
Now, the question we may be asking, what is the church? How were the disciples meeting 2,000 years ago? Jesus, how did he meet with the disciples? Well, the Bible says, to the law and to the testimony, they speak not according to this word. It is because there is no light in them. So let's look at what the law and the testimony says. Philemon 1:2. And to our beloved Aphia and Archippus, our fellow soldier, and to notice, the church in the house, or in thy house. Now, again, out of the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses. 1 Corinthians chapter 16, verse 19. The churches of Asia salute you. Aquila and Priscilla salute you, much in the Lord, with the church that is in their house. And how I kept back nothing. That's Acts 20:20. Paul says, that was profitable unto you, but have showed you and have taught you publicly and from house to house. And what he means by that is the same thing that the first two verses says. They were meeting from house to house. And another point to bring across here, one of the reasons for that, because they were being persecuted. Now, by whom were they being persecuted? By the organization in their days, by the general conference in their days. And so they were meeting from house to house, and they represented the true church. Now, keep in mind, the organization represented the body, but the disciples, the faithful few, just like the 7,000 who were meeting in a cave, they would not associate themselves with Baal, Ahab, and Jezebel. So I guess according to Conrad Vine, those are offshoots as well, the 7,000 and the Apostle Paul and those who are meeting from house to house. Again, let's continue. Colossians 4:15. Salute the brethren which are in Laodicea and Nymphas and the church which is in his house. Matthew 10:20 or 18:20. For where two or three are gathered together in my name, whether if it's in a house or within the prison wall, there am I in the midst of them. And then again, likewise, greet the church that is in their house. You get the point. The next one says, and in every house they cease not to teach and preach Jesus Christ. And Sister White describes here what the church is. The church doesn't have to be meeting under a corrupt organization like the General Conference. She says God has a church. It is not the great cathedral, neither is it the national establishment, neither is it the various denominations. It is the people who love God and keep his commandments. And then she says, where two or three are gathered together in my name, there am I in the midst of them. Now keep in mind, we read that amidst these other passages that describe how the disciples would meet. Then it says, where Christ is, even among the humble few, this is Christ's church. For the presence of the high and holy one who inhabiteth eternity can alone constitute a church. And so that means, since the disciples were meeting from house to house, it means they were also bringing tithes and offering, not supporting the organization. As a matter of fact, Conrad Vine himself, in his contradiction, he even said something like that. And Sister White went on to say, where two or three are present who love and obey the commandments of God, Jesus there presides. Let it be in the desolate place of the earth, in the wilderness, in the city enclosed in prison walls. The glory of God has penetrated the prison walls, flooding with glorious beams of heavenly light the darkest dungeon. His saints may suffer, but their sufferings will, like the apostles of old, spread their faith and win souls to Christ and glorify his holy name. The bitterest opposition expressed by those who hate God's great moral standard of righteousness should not and will not shake the steadfast soul who trusts fully in God. They that will be doers of the word are building securely, and the tempest and storm of persecution will not shake their foundation, because their souls are rooted to the eternal rock. So, brothers and sisters, we have been meeting from house to house in different venues. Well, I guess we are offshoots. So, as I mentioned before, Conrad Vine, allegiance to the conference is too deep, is too great,
or anything like that. So it's not an offshoot. The next question is about tithe. And we have a very clear tithe statement on our website, which is pretty much identical to almost every ASI member. Now, we're not a member of ASI. And so if you're going to be a member of ASI, you have to agree not to receive tithe. That's the bottom line. And so we have a statement on our website. It's very clear that we do not knowingly receive tithe. Now, that word knowingly is important. And every supporting ministry has basically the same attitude. So it's a complex situation. You do your honest best to make sure that tithe from known Adventists goes to local conference. So I'm doing my best, despite despite the cancel culture from the hierarchy towards me, I'm doing my best to operate in as ethical a manner as I can towards the wider church and to not knowingly receive tithe.
So every time I return a tithe check now, I have to do so with a prayer of forgiveness. So every time I return a tithe check now, I have to do so with a prayer of forgiveness. Because I'm returning tithes to a system that tells me I'm worse than a terrorist and a Satan worshipper.
That is the reason why he cannot fully understand what the Bible says about Protestantism. He cannot fully understand what the Bible says about being a reformer. One more time, Isaiah 8:20, to the law and to the testimony, if they speak not according to this word, it is because there is no light in them. God bless you.